Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new box office breakdown show here on Mac Talks. My name is Mac Dinnerberg. If you're new to the channel, today on my usual box office breakdown shows, I break down the previous weekend's box office. Today, I'm going to break down the weekend of April 14th to 16th, and then we're going to look at the worldwide and domestic charts so far this year and take a look ahead on what's hitting theaters this upcoming weekend. So I'm Mac Dinnerberg. Welcome to Mac Talks Movies. If you're new, please subscribe, ring the bell, do other movie reviews. This show every single Monday, as well as the TV show reviews and movie rankings. So please subscribe, ring the bell if you're new to the channel. Comment down below. What are your thoughts overall on these rankings? What did you see this past weekend at the box office? What are you going to see this upcoming weekend? And tell me about why you think Super Mario Bros. Is doing this well at both the worldwide and domestic box office. Also, please like the video, guys. The thumbs up button. That's how you support this channel. So let's get into this past weekend's box office here domestically, which I said earlier, April 14th to April 16th. We had a couple new releases hit the domestic charts. But kicking things off at number one, of course, was the Super Mario Bros. From Universal and Illumination, which shockingly, based on its final numbers, only dropped 41% in its second weekend. 80, sorry, just regular on the money, 87 million in its second weekend, which now takes its total up to 347.8 domestically. We'll get into the overall numbers, but this was a huge shock to a lot of people. I think a lot of people thought it'd be like the 50, 55%, but this is basically 40% drop, especially for a movie that came out not just obviously during spring break and Easter weekend, but the movie came out on a Wednesday and was a couple days ahead of its usual of movies' usual Friday release dates, and still only dropped 41%. Now, while the critics it's around on Rotten Tomatoes, this has clearly been a fan not service, but I think a lot of fans of Nintendo, it's been an audience that has never been reached before on the big screen. Again, Nintendo's only done one movie, that live action Super Mario Brothers movie, which is a long time ago. And you can tell that this fan base has been waiting to see their favorite characters on the big screen for their whole lives. And this is also all generations. Again, this games came out in the mid-'80s, and people from that generation to our generation to this generation basically have some knowledge of these characters and some game that these characters are a part of. So I think the wide reach is good. I also think fans have been really satisfied by the movie. It has like a near A cinema score. Its Rotten Tomato audience score is excellent. So I think this film is going to continue to do well. Again, I think it has two more weekends really to itself, as there's no big movies hitting theaters until May 5th with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So this film does have two more weekends at the box office here in the United States to really keep racking up the numbers. And I just can't wait to continue to follow this. This is the absolute home run for Universal, for Illumination, and for Nintendo. We'll get into more about Super Mario Brothers when we look at the domestic and worldwide charts. In second place is one of the two new films that came out this weekend. I think it's the one that people were not expecting to overtake the other, and that is The Pope's Exorcist from Sony Pictures, getting second place with $9 million. Again, this is actually a pretty shocking thing. A lot of people thought that one of the films that I'm going to talk about in a bit would clearly overtake this film, but this is clearly a really good sign for Russell Crowe, who has been making some very low budget, either theater movies or streaming or direct-to-video movies that have done very well. And there's clearly still a small enough but good enough market for Russell Crowe out there in Hollywood today as a lead actor. It is a horror film. Again, this film did not do well, both critically or audience, so expect this to take a bit of a major dip in its second weekend, especially with a big horror movie coming out next week. But still, the fact that this won over the other film it was going up against is definitely a big win for Sony, and definitely a big win for Russell Crowe. In third place in its fourth weekend is John Wick Chapter 4 from Lionsgate, dropping another 45% in its fourth weekend, up to 7.9 this past weekend. And so far domestically, that's a 160.1. So clearly John Wick Chapter 4 was very much front-loaded. Again, I mean, a lot of these films, including Dungeons and Dragons, Scream, that are very front-loaded because all these movies are only these past in the month of March. All of those movies were made for IMAX, but only got those IMAX screens for 1 week. And because of the situation, if you're not familiar with IMAX, is most theaters only have one, maybe two IMAX screenings. So only one movie at a time a week can take those screens. And John Wick has really suffered that it only had those big premium screens. Also being nearly 3 hours is also very tough to come back to. Still the biggest win for the franchise so far, but I don't think it took off as many people expected, especially coming out of the gate so hot as it did. In fourth place from Amazon Studios is Air in its second weekend, 7.8 million. It's a 46% drop. It's up to 33.4 million. Now, this movie did have a near $100 million budget. But again, I think Amazon Studios is going to make a lot of money off of this in the PVOD market. And when maybe it hits Amazon Prime, I'm not sure how Amazon Studios never really puts their movies in theaters. I think this is a really good test for these streaming services services to get these movies, make them exclusively in theaters, and then work them into their usual plans. Again, I think Air is going to have a lot of legs as it heads into awards season in the next 8 to 10 months. So I think this movie will eventually pay off, and the money will be good by the end of it, especially if the award season is as fruitful as I think a lot of people who saw the movie like me think it can be. Now, the big shocker of the weekend is that finishing in 5th place in its opening weekend was Renfield from Universal. 7.7 million. This is not a great number. Universal's been really good the last year and a half, 2 years with low budget, just action horror movies that don't have the biggest audience, but does really well and makes up for its budget. Very similar to earlier this year, like, for example, Cocaine Bear, or David Harbour's Santa Claus movie that came out at the end of the year. Low budget, but did very well in theaters. Renfield definitely disappointed. I don't think a lot of people thought Renfield would lose to The Pope's Exorcist. And I think the biggest reason why, again, for this movie as well, is that while the critics and audience scores just aren't that great, B- is a really bad cinema score for this movie. And I think a lot of people are begun to realize that there isn't as much Nick Cage as a lot of people expected heading into this movie. So I don't think the word of mouth isn't very good. The critics obviously didn't really like it that much. I think that's really hurting this movie. But 7.7 is not a great number, but I think this movie will find its audience when it comes home for PVOD. I think a lot of people saw this more as a streaming movie than have to go see it in a movie theater type movie. But we shall see. At the overall domestic box office, Super Mario Brothers is now obviously the biggest movie of the year so far here in the United States, 347.8, not even close, with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania number 2 with only 212 domestically. Again, huge bomb for Marvel and Disney. John Wick Chapter 4 gets up to number 3 with 160.1 after this past weekend. Creed 3 is at 154.2 at number 4. Scream 6 is number 5 at 106.7. So far this year, we've had 5 movies at over $100 million. And then finishing off the top 10 is Megan, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, which has become a pretty big bomb for Paramount. High budget film with a new franchise, just did not do well. Only a 74 million domestic. It's already out of the top 5 here domestically. So it does not look like Dungeons and Dragons franchise will be happening anytime soon. And then wrapping up the top 10 is Cocaine Bear, A Man Called Otto, and Shazam! Fear of the Gods. Again, Shazam! Fear of the Gods has made $7 million less than A Man Called Otto. That is really, really bad news for DC and Warner Brothers moving forward. When we get to the worldwide numbers here, Super Mario Brothers has now overtaken 2 Chinese films, which has been at the top 2 of the year. And now Super Mario Brothers is the biggest movie of the year worldwide. 678 million worldwide in 2 weekends. It has 347.8 from domestic, and it has 330.1 worldwide, internationally. And one of the biggest things that's upcoming for Super Mario Brothers is that it hasn't even hit Japan yet, which is the home of Nintendo, which we've seen in the past that its highest it can reach for a domestic movie is around 150, 200 more million. So Super Mario Brothers looks destined to get to $1 billion. I mean, the first $1 billion movie of 2023, especially with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Only projections are around 130 for the opening weekend. So I think there's a lot of things that have gone into this. I think the Nintendo audience is there. There's also a lot of anti-Disney people that are checking out this movie as well. But again, Japan does not get this movie until April 28th, which is a week from Friday. So So next weekend, it will hit Japan. So we'll see if there's a huge bump in box office for Super Mario Brothers, and also around that holiday, it's a huge holiday time for Japan. So I think the numbers are going to be coming in really big over there next week. So I think a couple weeks from now, we'll really understand when this movie hits Japan, what this movie truly is. I think it'll have a lot more worldwide than it will domestic. But this movie is doing unbelievably well. Again, Illumination already has 2 movies into the $1 billion club with Despicable Me 3 and the first Minions film. And this past Minions film, Minions: The Rise of Gru, which came out last year, got to 925 worldwide. So Illumination is on some roll with their past couple of films, and this will definitely join it. As I said, 2 Chinese films are 2 and 3. Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania is at number 4 with 466 million worldwide. John Wick Chapter 4 is at number 5 with 349 worldwide. And then you have Creed 3 at number 6 of 270 worldwide. Finishing up 8 is Scream 6 with 166. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves does get into the top 10 worldwide at number 9 with 157. But again, that movie was well over $100 million. So it needs a lot more money just to break even for both Paramount and the Cruise. So that is this past weekend's box office. A lot to break down. I sadly was not here to do I had something come up personally that I could not do the box office breakdown show last week, but we have a lot of things coming out this weekend. Nothing too big like a blockbuster, but still things are coming out this upcoming weekend. The biggest is Evil Dead Rise, the return of the Evil Dead franchise. Promotion has been everywhere for this movie. And we'll see if this is a Warner Brothers movie, if Evil Dead Rise can get some Warner Brothers positivity back. Also, there's a couple other movies in limited release will be Chevalier, an Oscar push for Calvin Harrison. We're hitting limited theaters this upcoming weekend. Also, Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, will also be hitting theaters this weekend, as well as Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid, which has not been received well critically or audience-wise. It's limited release last week. It finally hits wide release this weekend. Again, Ari Aster coming off of Hereditary and Midsommar, and then Joaquin Phoenix. So we'll see if the 3-hour runtime affects Beau is Afraid. But those movies are all coming out this upcoming weekend. So that's this past weekend's box office. Like, subscribe. More videos are coming soon to the channel. I'll see you guys then.